This is John Black, Super Chemist. We're here to talk about germination. I want to, reiterate here that, this isn't. I'm not going over the best way. I'm going over the way that I know that works. Okay. So I'm sure there's lots of better agars and better methods, but I just do this. So the first thing I wanted to go over was 3 vocabulary words: pasteurize, sterilize, sanitize. You'll notice that pasteurize and sanitize only kills most of the contaminants. Okay, pasteurize is from heat, maybe pressure. Sanitize is like using Lysol chemicals to clean. But you don't get 100% of the contaminants killed. Okay, only when you sterilize do you kill 100% of the contaminants. Okay, and when you're cleaning stuff, all you're doing is sanitizing it. Okay, sterilization takes a lot of pressure, a lot of heat. Okay, so how do you germinate? You just take your spore print, and you can see it right here. You take your petri dish, and you basically just get a knife and you scrape you scrape off some of this stuff into your petri dish. I want you to notice that on a petri dish, the small part is the bottom and the lid is bigger. Fits over it. Okay, and you just pour your agar about that much, and that's it. But there is such thing as contamination, so I'm going to go over a little bit more. I'm not going to go over all the cleaning stuff, but basically anything you work with, you want to clean with Lysol and spray it down with Lysol. Clean it with some Clorox or some 70% isopropyl alcohol, and wipe it down good. Keep in mind, if you use isopropyl alcohol and you're using a still air box, be careful, because if you spray inside the still air box, you'll have a whole bunch of vapors of isopropanol, and then you try to use a flame to sterilize your knife. Oh, you might catch something on fire there. So keep that in mind. Now the agar, I said in the last video how to get it. You just buy it, and the rule of thumb is 10 to 15 grams for every 500 milliliters of water. Okay, unless they give you instructions. Like, I've never had agar where they gave you the instructions, but apparently sometimes they put the instructions wrong. You stick to the instructions. If they don't have them, this is the rule of thumb. So you want to, put your agar in, put your water in. It's really hot. Stir it up. Make sure it all dissolves. Okay, if it doesn't dissolve, then it's not going to turn out good. Make sure it all dissolves, and then you can sterilize it. You don't need a pressure cooker. Okay. Now I want to go over a couple things. What's the difference between an autoclave, a canner, and a pressure cooker? Okay. They're all autoclaves. All an autoclave is something that heats up, pressurizes, so that you can kill contaminants. A canner and a pressure cooker both do that. So technically they're both autoclaves. But when you buy one of these cookery things, it's not going to be called an autoclave unless it's really, really good, really high pressures and blah, blah, blah. A canner usually has 15 psi to 20 psi above atmospheric pressure. That would make it 29.7 psi if it's 15 over. That makes water boil at 250 Fahrenheit. A pressure cooker, and these vary, a little bit. So my pressure cooker is 11 psi. That means it's 11 psi above atmospheric pressure, which means it's 25.7 psi. It makes water boil at 235 Fahrenheit. So that's better than 212 Fahrenheit for atmospheric pressure. So all you do is when you put your stuff in your pot, you got to have a trebet or whatever you call that, like a little metal thing to get your stuff off the bottom. You don't want your flame touching this and then your can's on the bottom of the pot. You know what I mean? Fill it up with some water a little bit, and for a canner at 15 psi, you'd have to do it for about 30 minutes. A pressure cooker, You have to do it about 45 minutes. Now, if you don't have that and you just have a pot like this, you do it the same way. You fill it with water, but you put your lid on to keep the steam inside. And because it is no pressure, you got to do it for 90 minutes. Okay? And always remember, though, when you're done heating this stuff and you're letting it cool down, keep it inside the pot. Because what happens is, you have a lot of pressure in these cans. If you take them out, right, you let them sit there, it's going to cool down. And inside the jar is going to be, it's going to get colder and colder, meaning less pressure, less pressure. And once it gets less pressure, it's going to start sucking some of the atmosphere in. So let it cool down to here. When you take it out, it's already down to room temp. It won't be sucking anything in, you know what I mean? No contaminants from the room. You know, you don't really need a pressure cooker to do any of this. You can grow mushrooms without a pressure cooker. This is one example of why you don't need a pressure cooker. You do more, you know, instead of 45 minutes, you do 90 minutes. And if any of these don't work for you and you're getting a lot of contamination, just jack up the, you know, instead of 90 minutes, maybe do it for 2 hours, 120 minutes, you know what I mean? But these should all work. With these are actually, you should actually be able to do it less time than this. But I'm just saying these so you're for sure. Never put closed containers in an autoclave, a pressure cooker can or nothing. Even this, where you're just putting it in a pot with no pressure. Don't close your cans or have them airtight. Pressure will build. It gets hot, the liquid evaporates, and you start getting pressure, and you're going to crack your stuff if you do that. Okay. Now these Petri dishes, they're loose enough and they have enough air, you know what I mean? When you put them together, when you put the lid on the bottom, that's not going to, you know, it's going to be okay for the pressure cooker. They're very loose fitting. So remember, never put closed containers in an autoclave. If you have glass Petri dishes or jars, okay, you can pour the agar into the dish first and then sterilize it. Instead of having to sterilize the agar and then you're going to have to pour it into the Petri dishes, you have a chance of contamination. This way you already have the agar in the Petri dish, right? And it's being sterilized. So once it's done, you just tape it up and it's done. Always use a container holding your agar that's easy to pour. Okay, you don't want to use like a mason jar where everything's going to be. You want something that has a spout on it. You know what I mean? All you got to do is cover up. If it doesn't have a lid, and even if it does have a lid, take the lid off, put it on the, you know, set it on there, but don't screw it on. And what you're going to tighten everything with is aluminum foil. I'll go over that at the end here. What else? Make sure agar dissolves fully. I already went over that. Now, when your agar is done and you let it cool down, right, you want to pour it at 50 degrees Celsius, 122 Fahrenheit. Because agar solidifies. When it's solid, it melts at 100 C, but when it's liquid, it solidifies at 42 C. That's 107.6 Fahrenheit. Okay? So you have a good, 15 degrees or whatever it is before it solidifies. And that's where you want it at. Because you don't want, that's the number one cause of condensation in your lids on your Petri dishes is that you poured it in too hot. You know what I mean? Now you have a lot of evaporation, a lot of condensation on the lids. Stack the dishes on each other. Okay? That way the bottom of the bottom of one Petri dish has the agar and it's hot. And it'll be sitting on the lid of the other Petri dish. And so when the water tries to condense on the lid, it can't because there's another Petri dish on top that has that hot agar in it, and it evaporates it. So that stops condensation also. And I don't do this, but you could insulate your dishes so they cool down slowly. The slower they cool down, the better, the clearer they are, the less condensation, all around better. Usually if you have a 25 sleeve of 25 Petri dishes, you save that sleeve and you put it over top of the Petri dishes, and that way it insulates the heat so it cools down slower. I don't do that though. Cover your Petri dishes or jars. Well, the Petri dishes you don't have to worry about, but if you're going to use a jar as a Petri dish, you're going to have to put aluminum foil over top of the lid. Okay, and that's about it on making the agar. When you get done pouring it into the Petri dishes, you can wrap around the Petri dish with parafilm, and that will keep it so it's all sealed up nice and it won't be contaminated. And then let it sit for 3 days, not in a refrigerator, just in the room temperature room, and make sure that no contamination grows on it. Okay, try to put it in an 80-degree room if you can, but if not, just put it in room temperature. And don't Pac-Man when you pour your stuff. Okay, this is Pac-Man, and when you go like this and you try to pour your stuff into that while you have your lid like that. See how it looks like Pac-Man? You don't want to do that. All it does is it makes you want to spill stuff. There's not enough room. What you do is you pick it up, you move it over, and then you pour. See, now there's nothing up above you, like in your way from pouring. You just pick it up, over, pour, back, down. Do it in a slow, people say to do this stuff fast. Don't do it fast. You're going to spill stuff. But don't do it slow either. You know what I mean? Do it almost in a machine type way where you're up, stop, over, stop, pour, stop, back, stop, on, stop. Now if you're using these kind of canner jars, you're going to put it on loosely, make sure that, and don't tighten it up more than like you just want it to be on there enough so that it holds. You don't even have to screw it on at all. Just have it on there, just like that. See how it's real loose? And then you put some aluminum foil over top of this. Now, how are we going to stop the contamination? Okay, the way you do this, though, you don't just pour this out in the atmosphere. You make a steel air box, okay? Here's an example. It's just a clothespin, a plastic clothespin. You can just use a cardboard box if you want, right? You cut 2 holes in it. They're about that size, so that you can get your hands through it. And you should get a clear plastic so you can see through it with a gasket on this lid. And that way you can clean everything down, put your stuff inside there, close up the lid, and then you can stick your hands through these holes, right? And do your stuff where you won't be breathing on anything, or, all the air will be still. And you clean everything again, and then you can pour your agar, okay? Like I said, you can use a box, cut a hole in the top, get a picture frame, take the glass out of it, or buy some plexiglass and tape it on top, and then put your 2 holes in the side for your hands. So you don't have to buy a box. These boxes probably cost $10, $15. Now, if you want to go crazy on it, what you can do is you can get like a 1/4 inch piece of wood, because these are kind of flimsy. Get a 1/4 inch piece of wood, put those same type holes in it, and get a pipe that's the same, whatever. This pipe looks long, but your pipe is only going to be about 3 inches long. It's going to be flush on the inside of the box. It's going to stick out about 2 or 3 inches on the outside of the box. And what you do is 1 piece of wood you put on the inside, 1 piece of wood you put on the outside, and you bolt them together. Okay. Then you slide your pipe through the hole, and you can, put some caulking around everything, so you got an airtight whatever. And now this pipe is going to be sticking out 2 or 3 inches. The reason why